Testing 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. Check, check, check. Let's see. Yeah, we got to get rid of that one. We'll just turn it off. Good day. Welcome. Glad you're here. Tim, Steve, Rich, Kyle, Ed, and I keep forgetting who Japs is. Is that Steve? Let's see. There we go. Four, five, six. 1, 2, 3. I get it, Tim. I get it. I get it. I get it. So you guys are going to want to take notes today, or not, as the case may be. It's going to be a good show. It's going to be fun. One of my favorite subjects, of course, vMix. Let's see. Okay, where is that other light coming from? That's coming from right there, or right there. But we'll do our best. That's what we need to do. We need to invert the color on the vMix Social so that it's got a black background and white letters, and it won't be as obnoxious. Can we do that? No, I don't think we can. I don't think there's a color invert, is there? Color correction. I don't think I can kind of invert it based on what's what. Let's see. Jacob, yes, of course. Sorry about that. Glad you're here. All right. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take this text and make it white and make the background black so that it doesn't reflect in my glasses, because I've got it on 3 screens. Not that I'll have it on 3 screens the whole time, but I will. So let's see. Let's take another look here. Jeff is just back from a 2-hour virtual auction planning meeting. Whoa. All right. Love to hear about it. Auctions are cool. And I think for some online retailers and bricks and mortar retailers, it could be a real lifesaver. Jim is here from Jackson, Canada. I didn't know there was a Jackson in Canada. Cha-cha-cha. Cha-cha-cha. Go again. Just 3 chas. Cha-cha-cha girl. Good afternoon. Glad to have you. Rich says his favorite shortcut is taking the frontage road by the side of the interstate. My favorite shortcut is going through the roundabout. Yep. I'm getting off at the second turn, not the first. And then you can go the back roads. But yeah, we'll have some shortcut jokes for sure. So does anybody know how to make this invert color-wise? How to make that invert? Let's try again. We've gone to the color adjust wheel, and we can make it, give it more darkness, and we can give it more, oh, there we go. What did I just do? I think I did it. Hot dog. How did I do that? No telling, right? Right. Let's see, can we get the text to be white? Well, that's not bad. Let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, that takes the text and takes it out altogether. All right, that'll work. Yes, it did murder the thumbnail. There's no doubt about that. Hello, Marie. Glad you're here. Oh, it's Jeff. It's the cha-cha-cha girl. All right. Oh, and Jim's in California, not Canada. I knew that. Okay. Yeah, well, the thumbnails are toast. There's no doubt about that. Sorry about that. So Marie has got this interesting look. Yes. All right. Very good. So now we've solved part of our reflection problem, with the rest of it probably going away when we do this. Yeah, there we go. That's not bad. So now that we've just got that light right there, right? I wonder if we can get that any taller. 1 second. There we go. That helps a little bit. So we're getting a little shadow there. Try a little bit more light there. That just makes it worse. Okay, we'll go with that. Tim's logo is designed to work inverted. Good, good. Yep, we could dupe the layer, multi-view it, crop the photos so that they're the right color. Yes, we could, but we'll go with this. Steve's like, oh yeah, I can fix that. I know how to fix that. I love it. I love it. Okay, how are we doing on time? We've got just a minute. Jan said, Tom, I really don't have time. Could you please postpone the show for tomorrow? I'm busy building my new vMix system. Well, is this the one with the 48,000 core CPU that you mortgaged your life on? Marie, do you know about this? I can't believe it. Oh, goodness. Lemonade. Lemonade. So today's setup is kind of interesting. We've got this cam. This is the BirdDog P200. It's a 30x cam, so obviously it's way overkill for what I'm using it for, because I'm 5 feet away from it. And then we've got this cam. Where is that cam? This cam right here. Yeah, there we go, right there. And this is one of the first cameras I ever started out with. This is the Canon Vixia HF R200. I started out with the R100, and I've still got some of those, but this is the R200, and it's hooked up to the BirdDog Flex 4K in. So it's taking the HDMI out of this old camera and sending it into this encoder that's PoE, by the way. And so, it's really cool too, because it's got a tally light on it. Even though it's not facing me, I can still see the kind of a halo tally light. That's pretty cool. So I've been able to essentially repurpose a camera that was just in long-term storage, simply because it was just not convenient to use HDMI. And so here it's now essentially a full NDI camera for $400. So I've basically taken something that wasn't useful to me anymore and made it useful. And I may even try this just as an experiment one day, as my head-on shot. So that's camera number 2. Camera number 3 is this cam, which is my good old XK80 from PI Engineering, the X keys, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, not because about the X keys, but because we're going to be talking about shortcuts. Excuse me. So that's that one. And let's see, let's go back to this shot right here. There we go. Oh, that's not the, oh, that was the wrong key. Let's try again. There we go. That's the key we wanted. So there we go. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, Jan says that's the one with the 48,000 core processor. Ed says, if I could remember I did half of the things I've done, I would be twice so far ahead as where he is now. That's good. The box came home today. I'm entitled to so many pair of shoes. Well, that's a pretty good trade. And yarn. Oh, and yarn? Is that what that says? Yarn? Yarn or yams? Hopefully it's yarn. Tim says GoPro has a webcam version of the Hero 8 for under $300. Hey, there you go. It's hard to find a good webcam these days. And Tim found a good HDMI USB 3 converter for under $20. Well, you'll find out if it's good. We'll see. And Chris is here from New Zealand. Welcome, Chris. You guys still on lockdown there, I'm afraid, huh? Let's see. It's yarn, yeah, not yam. If you look at it up there, it's hard to see. Is she talking about sweet potatoes? No, it's yarn. And she knits. All right, very good. Very good. How are we doing on time? We've got a minute, 8 seconds. I love the vMix little production clock. It sits right in the middle for me on my transition bar. And it counts down to the show time. And then at the bottom of it, it shows the local time. So we've got a minute here. All right. All right, so we don't have a guest today. I am the guest. I am the guest with my shortcuts. All right. All right. Well, let's get this show started on time. I don't want to move my X keys because it'll be out of the picture. All right. We got 12 seconds. 10, 9. I should have the countdown here. Oh, Marie says, don't mess with the colors of the chat. Okay. Hang on, let's get this show started the right way. Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Sinclair, and you've arrived at the end of the internet. That's right. This is Streaming Idiots, the show about live streaming, and it's about those of us that live stream. Because sooner or later, if you live stream long enough, yeah, you'll do it. You'll screw up. You'll forget to hit the record button, or accidentally cut the live stream right at the beginning of the show, or do half the show with your mic muted. Yeah, I can say I've done most of those. But today we're going to be talking about vMix and vMix shortcuts, because that really is the power in production. Doing a show like this one, a talk show, or doing a church service, or a football game, or a virtual event, all sorts of stuff that is really best done in vMix, number one, but with vMix shortcuts, because shortcuts allow you to do so many different things. And we're going to get to that in just 1 second, just 1 second. But before we do, I do want to mention that there is a special in our store at Eastern Shore Broadcasting. If you do the QR code thing, you go straight there. Oh, actually, it's not in the store. We need to put it in the store. We've been talking a lot about bird dog cameras lately, and about bird dogs in general. We talked in pre-show about the, I've repurposed, let's see if we can find this camera here. I've repurposed my Canon Vixia HFR 200, which is just a little handy cam. And it's now a full NDI cam thanks to the BirdDog Flex, Flex 4K-N. How about that for a name? And so that provides that kind of side shot. And I was just playing with it. I just wanted to see how would it do, how would it work. You know, the encoder, the BirdDog Flex encoder, is PoE, and it has DC out, direct current out. And so I'm trying to find the right cable that I can go direct current out to the camera to power the camera, so that essentially I'm running one Ethernet Cat6 to the Flex, which powers the Flex and powers the camera and encodes the camera's HDMI output, which is an input on the Flex, to full NDI and sends it back to me here. So I'm pretty stoked. Again, it's just either getting or making the right camera to make it work. So it's a great way to repurpose all of those cameras that you have on the shelf, or you're struggling with, you know, how do I convert to an all NDI environment? Well, the BirdDog Flex is a great way to do it. I think it's $400. It's in our store at easternshorebroadcasting.com. But that's not why I mentioned it. I mentioned the BirdDog because they've got a special right now. If you wanted to buy 3 of these cameras, the BirdDog P200 that I'm using right now, you get their keyboard free. So if that's of interest to you, it's not in the store, shoot me an email, shoot me a note. I'd be happy to share all the information about it for you. It's an amazing deal. The keyboard is a $1,500 item when purchased by itself, and is really good. I mean, you can get into the color adjustments on the camera through that keyboard. Really nicely done, and it'll control other Visca over IP devices too. We've had it controlling some of our PTZ Optics cameras here. Anyway, oh golly, gee whiz, forgot to turn off the phone. Sorry about that. Not a good thing to do. It's kind of an idiot mistake, don't you think? So, all right. So we're talking today about the shortcuts in vMix. Now and Rich says the Vixias have a USB cable to power them. That's available on Amazon. Ah, okay. Yeah, there you go. Well, then we need to talk about that, because obviously the BirdDog Flex output is not, it's just a little round DC jack. But there's got to be a way to work it all up. Splice it, says Joe DeMax. He says you'd think you have to make the cable. I think the input on that Vixia is not one of the round ones, although I'll have to check. I think it's that proprietary kind of upside down H looking one. Anyway, today we're running vMix Pro version 23.0.0.60, which is the latest greatest of vMix. And by the way, if you haven't updated to that, it's $60 to update. You really need to, because there's some API updates that vMix has put in for Facebook, and I think even YouTube and maybe some others. So if you're still on 21 or 22, it's worthwhile updating. And we're using the BirdDog, obviously, the Canon Vixia, obviously, and then we've got another camera here, which is the Logitech C920, which I've got set up and zoomed in on my my keyboard here. So let's go back to the main shot here. Interesting how that main shot kind of faded in with a different background in it. I need to fix that. The idea today is we're going to talk about vMix shortcuts, my favorite shortcuts with vMix. And you can see, let's go back into my keyboard. You can see that this keyboard is not arranged in any way that makes sense to any human being on the face of the earth except me. That's just the way it is. And it's just an amalgamation of things that have been added to. And there's some buttons like the pink button up here. I know what the pink button means. So if I press the pink button, it automatically takes the chat actually the vMix Social, and it puts it in preview for me. And that allows me to see the chat in preview while I'm still on the line, still doing the show with you guys. So it's really, 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 really helpful for me to have that one. And it's pink just because, it's not like anything else. And what I need to do is I want to show you guys my vMix. Can I do that? Can I pop up the settings for shortcuts and do a desktop capture at the same time? No, I can't. Okay, well, let's just do a desktop capture of the vMix of this monitor, and then we'll do it that way. So bear with me just 1 second. I did not have my ducks in a row as I should have. All right, so there's that one. Let's go in and sharpen it. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but just bear with me just a second. That's right. And then we're going to blow it up a little bit. There we go. All right. So let's cut to this one, and then let me add the vMix shortcuts. There we go. All right, so we'll put them right there so you don't have too much of the view. And we're going to find the pink button. So we'll press the pink button right here. And that is channel 1, note 65. And that one's right here, which says it's going to preview an input, which means it's going to take an input and put it in preview. And that input is number 39. And number 39 is my vMix Social, and it's a browser input, but it's not a browser input in the sense that I'm taking the full screen of the browser, because that would make the text too small for me to see. So I actually do the browser on a, believe it or not, a 720 by 720 resolution. And then I tweak it a little bit in the positioning tab. And so this pink button is the way for me to, in fact, if I press it, will it work? Yeah, there we go. So you can now see in the top left corner now what I see during the show. So you have an opportunity to kind of peek over my shoulder, as it was. And remember, before the show, we inverted the video so that we could, so that it wouldn't reflect off my glasses quite as bad. Yeah, don't show the vMix call password. Yeah, really. Oh my gosh. Marie says, I think Tom needs to add a button with ducks to the keyboard. He's always talking about getting his ducks in a row. Well, I've got bananas. I could get my bananas in a row. All right, so that's the pink one. And that's one of my faves, because that means I get to see what you guys are up to while I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing. Another one of my faves, and then let's go back to that shot. There we go. Of the yeah, can we do, so you guys are seeing the keyboard right now. Okay, so you're seeing the keyboard, and this button right here, that is FTB Part 1, and I'm not going to press it because all sorts of things will happen, obviously. But I can find it. So let's do a find. I tell you what, let's go back here. Let's stop that for just a second. Can we just do a take? Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to do a find, and I'm going to press that button, FTB Part 1, Fade to Black Part 1. And that is channel 1, note 14. And notice when I click OK, it's going to find a whole block. I don't know if you can see the subtle differences in coloring right there. And I want to get the chat up where I can see it. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, these 7 shortcuts are all executed by one key. And they're executed in the order in which they appear right here. And I can change the order by highlighting one and then moving it up or down. So we can move it up and then we can move it back down. But let's go back to the find so that we've got everything highlighted in the same place. This is number 14. There we go. So this is how I start my show, or this is how I start the show part of the show. Yeah, Marie says, last time Tom forgot to blur out the call number and somebody called in. You would think he would figure that out. I don't think you can see a call number, so I think we're safe at the moment, although you never know. No one's called in yet. That's right. That's right. But here, the very first one says preview input number 20, virtual opening. Well, this is the Jaws of Death opening sequence that Martin Kay so wonderfully designed for this show, probably 4 years ago, and updates it every year with a new copyright and changes some of the pictures. But basically we're saying, okay, put that in preview. Put that in preview so it's ready to go. That's the first thing in this single shortcut. The second thing in this shortcut is, oh, you can't see the call number. Oh, you rascals. How about that? There we go. Better now, or we could just do this. No, we can't do that. Anyway, all right. Gee whiz. So, well, if you call in, you're in trouble. The second thing that happens in this shortcut is that all of my overlays are turned off. So if I have an overlay hanging around for something I was doing in pre-show, or something that I accidentally left on from something else, this allows me to turn all of those off. So I start with with kind of a clean screen. The third one down, and Ken has already seen that one, is that I fade to black. And so what that does is it takes my output, my program output, and fades it to black, so that it fades black. While it's fading to black, I start the recording, which is the fourth item that happens, the fourth command that's executed by this shortcut. The fifth command is I want my closing video to restart. Sometimes, I'm not quite sure why or where, if I'm playing around, sometimes that closing video did not restart. So I just want to make sure, for sure, when I hit the closing video, that it will start at the beginning. So I'm restarting that. And then the sixth thing I'm doing is I'm cutting to that opening video that I put in preview at the very beginning of all this. And then I fade to black a second time, so that the first time anybody sees anything is when that opening video starts to play. So everything is kind of queued up in the program output, and when I do the second fade to black, I sort of reveal it at that point. So that's the order in which those are executed by that one single shortcut that's FTB Part 1. Now you say, why is it FTB Part 1? Well, because there used to be a Part 2, and then I realized I could combine all of it into one, so now I don't have to press two buttons. It is sequenced from up to down. Yes, Rich, up to down. So it's a great way to get a lot done with the press of one button. And again, it happens the same way every time. I don't have to remember to fade to black the first time or start the recording or anything. And it happens in order, number one, but within milliseconds of each other. So the whole thing from start to end, from number 1 to number 7, probably is, I don't know, 10 milliseconds, maybe less. And yes, you can move the lines up or down. And so I've got them in the order that I want them to occur at this moment. So Jodamax says it's like a macro. Well, it's indeed. It doesn't answer an if-them statement, or it doesn't make any decisions. It just does what I direct it to do. And so that's how we start out today's show. Now there's another button that I love on my keyboard, and let's see, can I get the keyboard? let's see, let's get the keyboard up here. I'm going to point out the ta. Oh yeah, I probably should have thought that through before I said it. Really, it's like ta-ta. And so if we go back here and let's find the ta-ta button. So I'm going to press the ta-ta button, and it's number 54. So we'll find number 54. There it is, kind of highlighted in light gray at the bottom. And it says that we want to play input number 45. Well, let's play input number 45. There we go, ta-ta. It's that easy to bring in, and this is an MP3, and so it could have been a 50-minute long MP3 or a 5-second long MP3. It doesn't go to output, it just plays. I've got another one right above it. You see the drum roll, so we can do boom, there you go. And then I think there's another one in that same sequence. Yeah, there we go. The dun, 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 dun. And so those are little sound effects that I've got available at the punch of a button whenever. Now, you don't hear those very often, but I do use those from time to time. Okay, so that's the ta-ta-ta. Let's see, let's go to this shot right here. So I've got a section of blue buttons right here, 1 through 4, and then 5 through 8. And those blue buttons are really handy because I have got those as shortcuts. In fact, let's find one of them. So let's go here. We're going to do a find. We're going to find blue number 2. Blue number 2, there it is, 62. No, that's right. Let's try again. Find blue number 2. There we go. Channel 1, note 20. So let's find it. There it is. And that is a cut to whatever input is number 2. So whatever number 2 input is, when I press the blue 2 button, it will always go to the number 2 input. And I can organize my inputs any way I want to. This blue number 2, I just drug into the blue number 2 position in pre-show so that I knew I was going to need it. I knew I needed it under a keystroke so that I can get to it easily and not have to use the mouse at all, because my mouse is currently being used. My mouse is currently being used in this window right here. But the fact that I've got this separate keyboard attached means that the separate keys on this separate keyboard can execute shortcuts even though I've got the shortcut window open. If I had a key that I wanted to do a shortcut on that was on my keyboard, I'm not sure if it would work. Let's see. Do we have a keyboard key? Let's see if we've got it. Yeah, there's a keyboard key. And I've got, let's see if the C one will do anything. Yeah, so it's not going to do anything because this window is kind of taking control of my keyboard for the moment. So let's go back to find. We'll find number 2. And number 2 goes to the number 2 input. And so you can see now that we've got the number 2 input, 7, 8. Oh, it looks like 7 does a lot. Oh, sorry. That's on input number 7, which is probably a camera. So let's see. Cut to the input. We'll find what number 3 does. So that's number 28. And number 28 cuts to the 3rd input. There we go. And there's the 4th input, 5th input, 6th input, and there's probably a 7 and an 8 around somewhere. And right now, let's get rid of that. Let's see, let's go back to that shot for just a second. Let me get rid of this graphic. And I can see that the top 8 inputs are this shot, which is input number 1, the shot of the XK80 that you saw is input number 2, Input number 3 is a virtual of my main shot when I'm in the green screen studio, so I'm not using that right now. Number 4 is side by side with guest. I'm not using that right now. Number 5 and number 6 are 2 vMix calls. Number 7 is the Bird Dog Flex, and number 8 is a second side by side with guest that I used with my grandson. But I could, I see it was Marie that called in. She's a rascal. She's a troublemaker. Thank goodness. I think make sure that audio for that one is muted. Yeah, okay, we're good. She's muted, so she's blocked it. I guess anybody else that wanted to call in could. So anyway, the blue buttons right there, the blue buttons right here, the 1 through 8 buttons, allow me to simply go to any one of my inputs, 1 through 8, and I can drag and put a new one in one of those positions. So I automatically have a shortcut on the keyboard that will go to that one. And that's been a lifesaver. That's been a lifesaver. Probably one of my favorite buttons, let me push this guy up a little bit so we can see him better, is the banana button down here in the bottom. This banana button, and it's big so I can find it easily without even having to look at this keyboard because it's in the bottom right-hand corner where I'll know where it is. When I'm in my green screen studio, and let's just go back over here for just a second. When I'm in my green screen studio, the banana button will mute the mic in that green screen studio. Now, here, this button mutes my mic. So I'm going to count to 5. 1, 4, 5. And you could tell that muted the mic. And it's got an activator to tell me that mic is active. Activators are a whole different kettle of fish, but we can talk about that. So I can turn on my desktop mic, and now you probably hear 2 of me, and I can turn it back off. It's got an activator in it too. Can't quite see it as well. I think just because the button covers more of the lights than this little decal I put on there. So the banana guide during a regular broadcast is one of my faves. Let's see if I hit the 1 there. Does that doesn't take me back to the 1? Oh my gosh. Well, gee whiz. That one will. There we go. So that's a favorite shortcut. One of my other favorite shortcuts, let's go back to the shortcut, is I've got a shortcuts for pre-show and post-show. And these I just printed out on my laser print, my dot matrix printer or whatever you call that printer. And you can see the ones that I printed out with the printer and the ones that I wrote by hand and the ones that I wrote quickly by hand. But one of my favorite buttons here is the post-show, because this tells me that the show is done and that we've had fun in the show, and now if we're ready for the post-show, and so the post-show is a ton of fun. And it's nothing more than just simply cutting to that input, which is a composite input that is the post-show. So that's lots of fun. Joe is asking in chat, do I use activators? I do for the mics, because I want to know if a mic is off or on. That's important to me, especially if I'm in the other part of the studio where I'm not looking at the vMix desktop. I might be looking at the multi-view, because I've got a big TV here that I use as kind of my control and confidence monitor. But it doesn't, depending on how it's set up, it may or may not show me mics. So I let the activator on that keyboard show me what the mic is. So Marie is telling me my audio was off. Thank you very much. Side commentary from Marie. And yes, Ed, it is helpful in a talkback setup, and thank you for giving me a segue on that. I've got 2 shortcuts on my keyboard that set up essentially a virtual green room. And key number 1, in fact, let's go back to the keyboard so you can see these keys, and they are stealthily marked. That is, this key right here opens a virtual green room with my first vMix caller, and this closes the virtual green room. So let's go back into the desktop shot, and let me get that over there. There we go. Okay. So so I'm going to hit the blue. I'm going to do a find, and I'm going to hit the first blue button, and that's going to take me to channel 1, note 2. So we'll find channel 1, note 2, and you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different shortcuts all under that one button. And so I am changing the audio source for caller number 472. I'm turning off a particular bus. I'm turning off a particular bus for my desk mic. I'm turning on solo for that person so I can hear them, and I'm giving them a particular video source, so it's just me that they see. So for example, if we're going to go into number 1 right here, we can see that the virtual call audio source is now assigning bus G to caller number 472. And then the second thing that happens is the audio bus for caller number 472 is turned off for M as master. So we're turning off the master for 472. And then we're turning off the master for the desktop mic. That's the mic that I'm on right now. And then we're turning on the solo for the caller 472 so that I can hear them. And then we're changing the caller 472, their video call video source, to output number 3, which I think in this case is a side-by-side shot of me and the guest. So essentially I'm putting me and the guest into a virtual green room that visually shows them me and shows them themselves. And I'm making it show so I can hear their mic and they can hear my mic, and so that nobody else can hear the mics because we've taken it off of master. And that one button does all those things. Now, at some point you have to put all those people back in the mix. So let's find MIDI note off channel 1, note 10, velocity 0. That's going to be this group that basically turns off and undoes everything that we just did. So the audio source now will be back to master. The solo is off. My mic is now on master. Their mic is now on master. Their audio is turned off, so I'm muting them. That's new. They are now part of the show, but they don't have voice yet. And then the last is I am sending caller 472's video source is back to output 1, which is the main output in vMix. And so now they can be part of the show, but until I press the button that turns their mic on, they are muted. But they can see the show, they can hear the show, and I can see the show and I can hear the show, and I'm in the show. Yeah, there we go. So let's see what we've got up here so far. Let's drag this down for just a second. Well, we'll get to those comments in just a second. I've got one last button or one last shortcut that I want to show to you, and let's see if I can figure out where it is. I'm not even sure if I have it set up. But so let me just tell you about it. At church, I go to Grace Anglican Church in Fairhope, Alabama. We're a small church, average Sunday attendance, maybe 35, not big at all. We've got a single PTZ camera from PTZ Optics. It's a 12X. It's a Gen 1, so that can tell you we've been doing this for a while. And then a small PC that I built for the church. We don't have any X keys. Sorry, Maggie. Sorry, Miranda. And so all the shortcuts are done from the keyboard. And I have set up these keys, the cursor control keys, the arrow keys, to move my PTZ camera so that I can move the left arrow and the camera will go left, right arrow, camera goes right. And the way the keyboard works is you don't have any pressure sensing on that, so you execute a shortcut. And so I can't like press it down and hold it and then let go when I want it to stop. I can do that with the X keys, but I can't do that with the conventional keyboard. So I use the space bar as my stop button. So I've got left, right, up, down, and then stop. And then I use the page up and page down arrows to zoom in and zoom out. Page up and page down buttons to zoom in and zoom out. And again, with a second control for the space bar that does the PTZ zoom stop. So with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buttons on my conventional keyboard, I've got the ability to control my PTZ camera. And I've gotten pretty good at being able to take the camera from one position and move it to a second position with a combination of pan, tilt, and zoom all simultaneously. So the camera will move and zoom, and if I hit the space bar at the right time, because I've timed all 3 of those actions to put me in the right place at the right time, then I can do that, and I've gotten pretty good at it. Again, this is Gen 1, don't have the controls over a PTZ Optics Gen 1 camera that you do with Gen 2, certainly not what you do with the NDI. But it does provide me with a great deal of control. If the pastor is moving around and suddenly takes a totally unexpected location during the sermon, I've got the ability to move the camera really quickly on the fly. I don't have to find a shortcut that puts me in a different position. I can just hit the right button and the zoom out button. Zooming out allows me to find him, and the right button is the direction that I knew he was moving at the very last second. So anyway, if you are using PTZ cameras, and I think it'll work for just about any PTZ camera that vMix can control. You have to have the vMix 4K or Pro in order to do that. But if you're using PTZ cameras, it's a great way to make those last-minute minute adjustments. Or if if you have all your presets set, and then unbeknownst to you, somebody is cleaning or painting in the church and moves the camera slightly, which throws all the presets off. And you only discover that Sunday morning while you're live. Yeah, that happened to me. And, they didn't realize that those little marks on the front of the camera and on the front of the stand, because it's just resting up there. It's a stand I built out of some plywood and some L brackets. And it's not permanently mounted there because it's got a pretty large platform, for a PTZ camera. It sits right down in the middle of it. And there's some little alignment marks on the camera and on the front of the stand so that you can get it aligned so that your presets will work. Because every now and then I'll borrow that camera and take it somewhere else to do something else with it. Anyway, that's a long story to give you the idea of how to move the PTZ. I'm going to wrap up this segment of the show, and we'll go to the pre-show, and I've got a special button here on my X Keys 80, and by the way, these are available in my store if you'd like them. It's called the outro button, and this is a button that I don't think I've ever changed because it does exactly what I want it to do. What it does is it does the jaws of death coming down on me right now. It runs through that video, and then it goes to the end screen with the copyright, and then the second part is I've done a shortcut that's delayed for that 18 seconds or however long that sequence is, and that delayed shortcut kicks in at 18,000 milliseconds to stop recording. And I think it might mute my mic at some point in there or something like that. Anyway, we'll give it a try here. We're going to hit the outro button. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Well, there we go. That was the outro, and it ended the recording, and it didn't mute me. So I guess I could have continued to talk through that. And now I've got a chance to take the questions on that. Let's see. Let's go back through them from stop to bottom. Rich says the regular X keys for vMix recognizes a push down state only. It doesn't show a key up or down simultaneously. Yeah, I think I'm not sure that that's correct, Rich. I can have two shortcuts assigned to the same key, one for the depressed function and one for the released function. And I'm trying to think if I've got one here. I don't think I've got one now, but I've set up some keyboards for some other folks like that. And in fact, I was trying to remember at one point, somebody was telling me that they had all their shortcuts for their X keys set on not on the depressed, fully depressed position, but on the released position, because they had people that had a light touch and didn't push it all the way down. So it never executed when it got down to the very bottom. So there you go. Rich says, can you check? Mine doesn't do that. Well, then we'll have to double check. We'll have to double check. Marie says, normal X key setup can be saved to the keyboard, so it would assume it is the same when using the shortcuts in vMix. I have never done the embedded shortcuts on the X keys, so I can't speak to that at all. I've always done mine in vMix only. So there. Marie says, I know you do it in basic programming of X keys in their program mode, but I've never programmed buttons for X keys. Right, gotcha. Now you can output your shortcuts. So if you've got shortcuts that are for a particular preset, or you want to go mobile and go to a different PC with vMix, but you want everything to be the same, you would save your preset, which would have all your inputs, and then you would export your configuration file in the settings. And those two files together, of course, with all the assets you had. A lot of people will say, okay, well, I've got my preset and I've got my config file, but when I open my preset, it can't find my assets. Well, your assets have to be in the exact same place. Your cameras have to be attached to the same port. Your USB audio mixer has to be attached to the same port. Your graphics have to be all in the same subdirectory. One of the easiest ways to do that, I think, is if you migrate from system to system a lot, is to keep those assets like graphics and photos and videos and MP3s, keep those in a Dropbox so that they're always in the same place regardless of what PC you're on. And that can save you a whole lot of time and trouble. Let's see. Are shortcuts universal? That's a great question, Ed, because if I have a shortcut and I change my configuration and I close out one of the items that my shortcut refers to, now my shortcut is broken. So in that sense, they're not universal. If, for example, with my blue buttons, my 1 through 8 buttons that are assigned to inputs 1 through 8, or apparently not 1, but 2 through 8, whatever inputs are in those 2 through 8 positions will work with those 2 through 8 buttons. So in that sense, it is universal. You can also save shortcuts one of two ways. You can save those kind of globally so that they'll apply to whatever preset you're running, or you can save them as this current preset only. So if you're doing kind of an oddball thing and you want to do some shortcuts and you don't want to include all the other shortcuts that you've been using, you can use shortcuts for this preset only. That works pretty well. Let's see. Lance asked, how do you in vMix, if you're bringing in guests through Skype, how do you assign a specific lower third to each? Oh, that's a good question, Lance. In my world, and everybody has their own favorite way of doing it. In my world, I use a trigger. And a trigger is kind of like a shortcut. A shortcut is something that's initiated by me on the keyboard. A trigger is something that's initiated in vMix based on what happens in an input. So for example, and I'm going to press a key on my keyboard that goes to the main show input. So that one, that shortcut starts all this, but when this input goes live, it counts down, I think, 2 seconds, and then it puts in the lower third, and then after 10 seconds, it takes out the lower third. And putting in the lower third and taking out the lower third are triggers. So read up on triggers. Triggers are really powerful and lots of fun to play with. But that's that. And of course, I've got to have this where it is. Yeah, there it is. I've got to have this graphic. It already exists, and this is I think it's probably an old one because I don't think it's got any movement in it. So this is not the new vMix GT zip format. I think this is just a PNG file that this text is static text in that PNG file, because I'm never going to change my own text. And then I included the OCR. I mean the the little bar graph thingy. Okay, let's see. Ken says, Tom, did you explain local versus global saves? You're talking about shortcuts? Yes, I think so. If not, to your satisfaction, let me know. Joe says you can do a find and replace on a vMix file to update the paths if you're brave enough. Yeah, you can if you're brave enough. The Dropbox method only works if your home directory is the same name from system to system. That's correct. That's correct. On that question, it depends greatly if you use index, a number, or the title, which I believe uses the internal GUID. Yes, that's right. And that's why with my blue buttons, I used the actual input number so that it wasn't tied to a particular input, whatever had that input position. Ed says, thank you. I'm setting up some shows and we'll start using shortcuts then. Absolutely. Shortcuts are the way to do it. Absolutely. And then coupled with that would be triggers. Shortcuts and triggers kind of go hand in hand. Shortcuts gets the action moving, and based on that action, the triggers can take it to the next level. Joe DeMac says, Tom, I would guess your issue with the other background showing on transition would go away if you use dissolve for that rather than merge. You're probably right. Let's see. In fact, we can check that. Let's just do a cut here, and we'll just do a fade here. That's a long fade. Holy cow. Oh, that's a 3-second fade. Let's set it for a 1-second fade. So we'll go back there and we'll fade here. There we go. Yep. And if I go back and then do a merge, well, even with a merge, it didn't bring in that background. Yeah, I guess it did. You can see it for just a sec. But good point, Joe. Lawrence says, sorry to ask again, your cam looks great. Oh, sorry about that. Lawrence, I haven't gotten back to your question. Are you using the BirdDog P200? Yes. Yes. Definitely overkill for my little studio. I mean, who needs a 30x lens for a 5-foot distance? But the ease of use of this camera is just amazing. I mean, go back to last week's show with Jeffrey Hill, and we just had tons of fun talking about this camera. I had sent him one to test out, and I know he's Jeffrey, if you're watching, my apologies in advance. But Jeffrey's a video snob. He is he just is. He's just a video snob, and he has very high expectations of video. And he was really blown away by this camera's performance. Number one, that it was able to come so close to matching his high-end BirdDog camera, high-end Blackmagic cameras. And number two, that he was able to do color correction on it that was able to match up the colors with this camera, with his Blackmagic camera. And then three, that the other settings were so easy to use. They were not buried in menu after menu. They were there. They did what they said. For example, the noise filter. Noise filter on this camera is amazing. It can take, in my experience and in Jeffrey's experience, it took out all the noise. So if you want to take a look at last week's show, it's a great, hour-long advertisement for this camera. But, he was just so hyped about it. He wouldn't stop talking about the camera. That's okay. That's okay. All right, I'm going to work backwards here and see if we can't catch some of the other questions. Are shortcuts saved into and brought up when you open a vMix profile? Ed, that's a great question because a lot of people think they are, but actually shortcuts are part of the vMix settings. So you've got settings on the one hand, and you've got the preset on the other hand. And the preset sort of frankly, I wish they were combined. The preset on the one hand determines what all your inputs are. And I think it also saves their triggers. And so all that is in the preset. So right now I'm working with, let's see, how many do I have? I have 61 inputs that I'm working with today. When I save my preset, it will save those inputs, what they were, what camera they went to, what file they went to, if it was a graphic or an MP3 or an MP4, all that would be saved as a preset. Oops, sorry, presets over here. The settings are where the shortcuts are saved. And the settings are also where our stream setting is saved and where our record setting is saved and where our preferences and options and all those things that you change in settings are saved in the settings portion, which is actually an export of the vMix config file. Terminology can trip you up. It does me all the time. So if I want to make a complete save of this desktop of my production today, I need to save the preset file and I need to save the export the settings file, the configuration file. Okay. Let's go back one more page and see what we can see. Questions. Tim says he would have made the mute button red when off to call attention to it. Logical. I guess everybody thinks differently, which is why, not everybody's wearing a blue shirt today. But for me, if something is active, I want to indicate that it's active. And so when I look down at my keyboard and I see that that light is on, I know my mic is on. And that for me, that just works. So it would be illogical for me for the light to be red when it was muted. But, I'm not a production guy. I think on a conventional audio board, a mixer, if you have a mute button the mute button will be red when it is muted. On my X keys, my intention with this button right here, you can see it's lit up. My intention with that button is to let me know which one of my mics is active. So I'm not muting the mic so much as turning a mic on and off. Because I have two mics, two main mics here, and sometimes I'll forget to turn one of them off or turn the other off. I've got shortcuts for that now, so it's much easier. All right, let's see. So Steve says, so do you set up different sets of shortcuts based on show needs and then import and export as needed? For me, Steve, again, using the X key 80, everything's marked for the most part. And so if I'm doing a different show, and I'm not using, for example, my main shot button, which is this shot right here, I'm probably going to just use other keys on the keyboard for that particular show to do what I need to for that show. Because I've got 80. Well, I don't have 80 anymore because I've got some big keys, but I've got plenty of keys to work with. And so I probably would not be doing an export. Now, if I had an XK24, which only has 24 buttons, and so I'm limited in the number of buttons, then I might be tempted to do something like that. And yeah. And then, of course, it would depend on how I had my X key labeled. Cut is always a cut. I mean, I've got a little take button here. Where is it? Get it into the picture. There it is. Take is always a take. So those are somewhat universal, but in terms of being able to hit a button and have an input go straight to output, that's going to depend. And so you may have a generic labeling of your X keys, with, a string of 4 buttons in red, 1 through 4, 4 buttons in blue, 1 through 4, 4 buttons in orange, 1 through 4, 4 buttons in green, 1 through 4. What is that? That's 16. And then some others that are labeled different ways. So I would, if I were doing a lot of different types of shows and I wanted to use my same X keys with it, I probably would have, buttons that are just generically labeled like that. But I probably would also have a take button. I probably, depending on how the setup was, I'd probably have a, kind of a universal audio mute button. I might have a stream button. I might have a record button. More likely, I would set that up as a shortcut with lots of different layers to it. Tim hears it as a ta-da, not a ta-ta. Well, there you go. That would solve that, wouldn't it? Okay, let's go back one more page on questions, and then I'll Jeff, I'm looking at a comment Jeff made about 40 minutes ago. He said, I would love to see vMix add a feature that allows you to group shortcuts by key and then maybe collapse them to clean up the shortcut interface. I think that's a great idea. Jeff, if you will make that shortcut, if you will make that feature request in the vMix forum under feature requests, which is how those get done, and then post a link to it in the Streaming Idiots group, I will give it a +1, which is how vMix determines how popular a feature can be and whether they want to implement it or not. Okay, so let's go back up to current day and see what I've missed. Ed says, understanding the settings in the import-export function value is great to know. Glad to have it. Ed has a great question. Can you use 2 X keys pads at the same time? Yes. Yes. You remember when I was reading out the coding on it, and I would say channel 1, and then whatever the other thing was, what was that, value? Or let's go in and look at it real quickly so that I'm giving you the right stuff. Let's find a button. Yep, channel 1, note 3, that's what it was. So the channel 1 refers to my XK80. I also have an XK, what is this? An XK12 joystick that I'm playing around with. And so this is on channel 2. And occasionally I'll put in an XKE 124 T-bar that I'll be testing. And so that'll be on channel 3. I'm not sure what the limit of channels is. At some point you have more X keys than you can deal with. But if you got multiple operators, for example, we set up a system for a local school a couple of years ago, and we've got an XKE 124 T-bar, and we've got an XK24 keypad. And same PC, but basically the school said we want to be able to split the function of, sorry, let's go back to this post show so nobody's confused about where we are. We want to split the functions into as many different tasks as possible so we can involve as many different students as possible. So we had one student on vMix on the regular keyboard, one student on the XKE 124, and they had it set up like a traditional switcher with a row of program and a row of preview and a row of overlay. The T-bar, of course, they could start and stop a stream. They could fade to black. They could cut and take, and of course they had the T-bar. And then they had videos available to them. The XK24 was used simply for overlays, and so they had overlay channel 1 active all the time. And then the XK24 was set up with, I don't think 24, but maybe a dozen different overlays. The first press, for example, on overlay 1 turned it on. The second press of overlay 1 turned it off. And so they could turn on overlays and turn off overlays. And so they would be queued for that throughout the program. And it tended to work pretty well. There were some kids that didn't want to do as much, and so something like that kind of fit them. They were active, but they didn't have to make any big decisions or be responsible. They just hit the right buttons at the right time. Of course, that didn't always happen, but that's okay. So yes, Ed, you can use 2 X keys at the same time. As says Ken, as says Tommy. Hello, Tommy. It says, I've been paying attention, but suddenly I have a client that wants me to do things that I haven't done before, so I have to catch up. Not a bad thing. Book knowledge and practical application are 2 different things. Absolutely. Yep. And, practical application is where book knowledge came from. Generally not the other way around. Practical application comes from trial and error a lot of times. Chris says, hey, a useful show for a change. Please elaborate Dropbox naming profile to work. Well, for me, when I establish a Dropbox on a PC, I put it, where do I put it? Let's find out where I put it so I can tell you the truth. Because the last thing I would want to tell you is something that's not true. It goes on the C drive. It goes in the user's subdirectory. It goes in the specific subdirectory for that. And so I am now in the, in this case, it's the ESB Studio PC -8700K subdirectory. And that is where my desktop and my documents and my downloads and my favorites and pictures and all those kinds of things are located. And there's a subdirectory there called Dropbox. And then within Dropbox, everything is organized the same. So on all of my PCs, I have got the Dropbox set up in this same, and I think this is a default location for Dropbox. If you put your Dropbox somewhere else, then obviously you're going to want to put it in that same organizational structure every single time. But there's nothing like the default for consistency. I think Google Drive, Tommy, I have not used Google Drive. Rich uses the Dropbox and puts it on his D drive. So there you go. There's another option. Tommy, I've never used Google Drive, so I don't know if that is it ends up being a physical location on your hard drive. Then my guess is it would work pretty much the same way. Rich says Dropbox has a nice agent that syncs all the files in the same location. Oh, that's nice. I like the fact that Dropbox just kind of keeps me updated. On my little laptop, I've got a little Microsoft Surface, which of course is, doesn't have a giant main drive and it doesn't have a second drive, and you can't replace the drive on it. That was the first thing I looked at when I got it. And so I don't want my entire Dropbox, of I don't know how many gigs of stuff. I don't want my entire Dropbox on my Surface. So when I installed Dropbox there, I just said, I don't want it all. Just give me what I choose to download, or what I say I need. It goes out and gets it. So I was working with something the day before yesterday, and it was a file that was in my Dropbox. I knew it was there because I'd put it there from another machine. When I went to my Surface to get it, it showed that it was part of the Dropbox ecosystem, but it had not been downloaded to my Surface. So it sort of was protecting my Surface drive. So I downloaded it because I needed it. But for the most part, I don't have everything downloaded on that one. And you can also set up a Dropbox that doesn't include every subdirectory within your Dropbox. So, for example, I think on that school computer that I was just telling you about, I set up a Dropbox that linked to only one subdirectory because I wanted the ability to add graphics to that machine, and not have that Dropbox there have access to my entire Dropbox. And then on other machines that I set up, which didn't need access to that school Dropbox, I just eliminated that directory from that one. So there was some customization you could do. Yep, there you go. Rich says you can selectively set the folders for each computer. There you go. All right, Ed says, I use Vadio presets with a TriCaster 8000 and a Sony RMBR300 remote control unit with an ATM set up for another client. Wow, that's a lot of brand names. Vadio, TriCaster, Sony, and ATEM, which of course is Blackmagic. Ed, I'm a simple guy. I like simple things because simple things don't break as easily as complex things. And it's much easier to troubleshoot something that's simple than something that's complex. So that's just me. We're building some systems now for some colleges, and I want them to have as much of a look like a traditional switcher, but yet at the same time keep everything in the vMix ecosystem and keep it simple. Yep. All right, Dave says, great show, good info on shortcuts. Gotta go. Glad to have you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Let's check something here. Where are we? Well, let's see if we can find our show here. Just one second. I lost it. Wouldn't be the first time I lost something. Okay, there we go. We're good. All right. Very, very, very good. Rich says, maybe you should have a basic show on what and how profiles are saved, presets, import, output, standardizing, struct. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. You want to come on the show and show your setup? Rich has got an amazing setup. He is doing some really, really cool stuff. Tommy says, I don't know. I can break simple things pretty quick. Well, if you can break them, that means they weren't very good. Yeah. Yeah. I like stuff that is really, really hard to break. Because I'm going to break it. I am. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap up. And Rich, that's an open offer. Remember, next week we have Anthony Barocas from Streaming Media Magazine, among other things, coming on to talk about workflows with virtual shows, virtual event shows. Really going to be an interesting topic. I think you'll really enjoy it. So you want to make a point of seeing it live. See it live so that you can ask him the questions. And remember, if you're interested in the bird dogs, anything bird dog, we've got it in our store, or if we don't have it in our store, we can get it. So just let us know. So happy to help in that regard. And of course, vMix and all the other things that we represent. We're happy to do that. And if you need a PC built for vMix, you're tired of one you built yourself or something off the shelf, or your TriCaster or whatever, we're happy to talk with you about that. So I'm going to sign off for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was my pleasure to be here with you, and my honor, of course. And I look forward to seeing you sometime in the future when we're allowed to see people again. So let's see if we can find a nice way to get out of here. Yeah, let's get out of here with this. This will work. All right. Bye, guys. Y'all take care.